But there are so many Filipinos in the crowd tonight, so many flags, thank you!
The roar inside Sobe Stadium was not the sound of a tennis match. It was the sound of a country that had waited 100 years to be seen. 10,000 voices. Philippine flags draped over the railings like nations display them during World Cup matches. And in the middle of it all, a 21-year-old from Manila stood still on center court in Toronto. Thank you, everybody, who is here tonight. Thank you to everyone who's supporting tennis. She let the noise wash over her before stepping to the microphone and answering the chant in Tagalog. That was Wednesday night, August 5th, 2026. And to understand how Alex Eala turned a Canadian WTA 1000 into a Philippine home crowd, we have to rewind 72 hours. Because what tournament director Carl Hale said afterward is something a man with 20 years in this job admitted he had never said before in his life. If you're one of the people who was watching this player before Toronto, before DC, before the mainstream started spelling her name correctly, this channel is your table. Subscribe and stand with the fans who saw this coming. Rewind to Monday. Eala had flown into Toronto barely 48 hours after lifting her first career WTA Tour title at the DC Open, beating Jessica Pegula in the final and climbing to world number 20. The Filipino crowd waiting for her in Toronto was not showing up to cheer a prospect. They were showing up to crown a champion who had already arrived. And Toronto, of all cities, was always going to be the flashpoint. Nearly 1 in 3 Filipino Canadians live in the Greater Toronto area. What happened next was the collision of a hero at her peak, a diaspora at its densest, and a tournament that finally, for the first time, guessed the demand correctly. Because for years, tennis got it wrong. At the Australian Open in January, schedulers put Eala's match against Alicia Parks on a small side court, and Filipino fans still cheered every point she lost, loud enough that Parks had to raise the roof of her own service game. In Doha earlier this year, Eala went out in the first round, but the crowd support was so unusual that tournament officials from other events reportedly took note. The pattern was obvious to everyone except the people building the schedules. Grandstand courts. 2,800 seats. Afternoon slots. The tennis establishment kept treating a nation of 110 million people as if they were a rounding error. Toronto is what happens when a tournament finally listens. Night session. Center court. 10,000 seats. And the tickets to a Wednesday night second-round match, historically one of the lowest value slots on the calendar, sold out in 30 minutes. Let that number stand on its own for a second. 30 minutes. A Wednesday night round of 32 match in Toronto gone faster than tickets to a stadium concert. In tennis, that is not just a sellout. That is a phenomenon. And when those 10,000 people walked into Sobe Stadium, they brought the country with them. Philippine flags at every turn on the concourse. Homemade signs reading Eala Mania and Mahal Kita, meaning I love you in Tagalog, pressed against the barriers. One fan showed up in a blue dinosaur costume draped in the Philippine flag, dancing every changeover. And a food vendor inside the stadium, without instruction from the WTA or the tournament, quietly pulled chicken teriyaki from its menu and replaced it with a Filipino chicken adobo rice bowl. Nobody asked them to. They simply looked around, saw who was in the building, and adjusted. That is the detail that gives the whole night away. This was not marketing. This was ownership. Then the chant started. Let's go, Alex. Let's go. Followed by 2 claps sustained across every single game, every changeover, every service toss. The in-stadium announcer was drowned out when Eala walked onto the court. And on the other side of the net stood Alicia Parks, the same American who had beaten Eala in Melbourne 7 months earlier in front of a smaller, quieter Filipino crowd on a side court that never should have hosted the match. The revenge scoreline, 6-1, 4-6, 6-2. 1 hour and 51 minutes. 5 break points converted out of 14. After Parks stole the second set, Eala broke in the 5th game of the 3rd and never gave the momentum back. Same opponent. Louder crowd. Different ending. Carl Hale, who has spent 20 years running the Canadian Open, watched from the director's box and said the words out loud, I have been doing this for 20 years and I have never seen such an incredible, alive, enthusiastic, passionate crowd. He called Eala an absolute blessing to the sport. This is not a Filipino sports writer reaching for a superlative. This is a Canadian tournament director, 2 decades on the job, admitting on the record that his own event has never sounded like this. Anyone who has been telling friends for 2 years that this player was going to reshape the sport, the ones who watched the Miami run in 2025 when the mainstream was still asking how to pronounce her name, you were not exaggerating. You were early. And on Wednesday night in Toronto, the rest of tennis walked into a building the diaspora had already built. Then Thursday brought a legend of the game to her side. Alex Eala partnered with Venus Williams in doubles, and even in a 6-4, 6-3 loss to Katerina Siniakova and Anna Kalinske, the flags never came down. And on Friday, Eala closed the trilogy. Center court. Katie McNally. 6-3, 5-7, 6-4. 2 hours and 39 minutes. A 7-match winning streak. A round of 16 spot at a WTA 1000. And a crowd that, in the third set, was somehow louder than it had been 48 hours earlier. Which brings us back to Venus Williams. 7 Grand Slam singles titles. 4 Olympic gold medals. 14 Grand Slam doubles trophies alongside her sister. A former world number 1 still competing at 46 years old. There are perhaps 5 people alive with the standing to hand a young player the word star and have it mean something permanent. Venus is one of them. At the joint press conference on August 6th, Venus did not reach for diplomatic politeness. She said, "Alex is a world star." She said, "Alex is incredible." She called her an impressive young lady and praised her mind as much as her tennis. When the woman who defined an era of women's tennis chooses the phrase world star for a 21-year-old ranked 20th in the world, she is not describing a ranking. She is describing a ceiling and telling the sport that ceiling is much higher than the current number suggests. That is a torch being passed in real time, with the cameras on. The economic gravity here is what tournament directors are only now beginning to model. Jessica Pegula, who lost the DC Open final to Eala 6 days ago, has publicly acknowledged that her own podcast saw a wave of new YouTube traffic driven by Filipino fans who found it because of Eala. That is not just fandom. That is a market. Coco Gauff put it plainly in a Toronto press conference this week. It is great that one player can bridge the gap between a sport and a nation that had never had that representation before. The round of 16 this weekend in Toronto is the next data point. Then Cincinnati. Then, 2 weeks from now, the US Open opens at Flushing Meadows, a stadium sitting inside the borough of Queens, which houses one of the largest Filipino populations in the United States. If Toronto sold out a Wednesday night in 30 minutes, the volume in New York is expected to arrive at a completely different level. Every one of those 957,000 Filipino Canadians, every Filipino American in Queens, every viewer back home in a country of 110 million just learning the sport, they are all watching the same player. That is not a fan base. That is a movement with a passport. And still, this was not a perfect week. Thursday night, one day after the emotional peak against Parks, Eala and Venus went down 6-4, 6-3. A real loss. Same court, same crowd, and no scoreline to hide behind. Eala did not disappear. She stood at the microphone next to Venus, told the press it was amazing to play under the lights, and thanked the crowd that had roared for her the night before and stayed for her the night she fell. To the Filipino audience, she spoke directly about the Wednesday crowd and the flags. So many Filipinos in the crowd. So many flags. Thank you. Less than 24 hours after the doubles loss, she was back on center court, winning a 2-hour and 39-minute war against Katie McNally. The flags never left. Neither did she. 30 minutes to sell out a Wednesday night. A chicken adobo bowl nobody asked to put on the menu. A 20-year veteran admitting he had never seen anything like it. Venus Williams reaching for the phrase world star. A blue dinosaur in a Philippine flag dancing through changeovers on a Canadian center court. In 7 days, Alex Eala won her first WTA title, cracked the world's top 20, sold out a WTA 1000 stadium in half an hour, and turned a Toronto tennis tournament into the closest thing the Philippines has ever had to a home Grand Slam. Now here is the question the comment section decides tonight. Eala is into the round of 16 in Toronto, with the US Open just 2 weeks away. Does she lift this WTA 1000 trophy in her very first appearance? Or does the weight of an entire nation in the stands finally catch up to her? Call your match. Call the round she reaches in New York. Stake your claim. And if you are one of the people who was watching this player before Toronto, before DC, before the mainstream started spelling her name correctly, this channel is your table. Subscribe and stand with the fans who saw this coming. The next chapter is being written on center court this weekend, and the people who called it deserve to watch it.